Welcome. This is Business Week coming to you from our studios here in Lagos, the nation's commercial capital. I am Frank Omalape, and here's what's coming up in a moment. President Bola Tinubu woos investors in Saudi African summit. Plus, Nigeria's headline inflation hit 27.33% in October. And finally, CBN says 200, 500, and 1,000 Naira notes remain legal tender. Well, these are some of the biggest stories on the program today. But let's begin with some business stories now. President Bola Tinubu has again proven that Nigeria is indeed open for business. He reiterated the Nigerian government's commitment to opening up the economy to attract more foreign investment into Africa's most populous nation. This and other developmental issues were the focus at the Saudi-Nigerian Roundtable meeting, which held on the sidelines of the Saudi African Summit in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Business editor Tolulope Ogujobi has more in this report.
The arrival of President Bola Tinubu and the Saudi Arabian entourage into the hall marked the start of the meeting, with focus on investment and business opportunities on both sides. The Nigerian delegation had top government functionaries, ministers, state governors, leaders of business community, and other key stakeholders in attendance, same as the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Again, President Bola Tinubu, who referred to himself as the #1 salesman of Nigeria, assured the Saudi delegation of an open business environment devoid of corruption, bottlenecks, and other factors deterring investment between both countries.
It's not an ordinary dream. It's a strong determination that is focused on partnership for success and driven by an ambition, unyielding ambition and commitment to democratic values, free market economy, private sector driven prosperity, and we are at it. We are ready.
We are set on this very transformative set of reforms that are quite compatible but complementary in nature, that bode so much promise for not only our countries and our people, but indeed for our regions, as we set the role model and the example of how economic development, prosperity, and putting the interests of the people first.
After an extensive and insightful meeting, which focused on attracting investment in various sectors, including health, energy, digital economy, agriculture, human capital development, logistics, mining, among others. Some of the members of the Nigerian delegation believe that with this move by Mr. President, Nigeria is set to take its real position as the giant of Africa.
Mr. President have spoken very well, eloquently. He clearly stated his vision that we want to grow faster than we have been growing, and we are an investment destination maybe like no other, a country of 200 and plus million people. You cannot go wrong with investing in it.
Since 2015, under the leadership of the Crown Prince and of course Nigeria, bold, courageous, visionary leadership, and a commitment to the private sector, a commitment to investment.
After hours of deliberation in this room, the conclusion is that Nigeria and Saudi Arabia set to strengthen ties, address all bottlenecks that have disturbed business transactions between both countries. President Bola Tinubu is sure that the benefits of this will impact the economy positively. Tolulope Ogunjobi, TVC News, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia.
And away from there now, the federal government says it has identified about $23 billion in investment opportunities in Nigeria for projects that are directly related to the country's energy transition. The Minister of Power, Mr. Adebayo Adelabo, said these in his remarks at the second German-Nigerian Symposium on green hydrogen. He said the opportunities will not only provide electric power for economic development, but will result in significant net job creation with up to 340,000 jobs by 2030. The minister said the energy transition plan will create up to 840,000 jobs by 2060, driven mainly by power, cooking and transport sectors adding that gas will play a critical role as a transition fuel in Nigeria's net zero pathways, particularly in power and cooking sectors. Also speaking on the essence of gas as Nigeria's transition fuel, the Executive Secretary, Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, Mr. Naira Oji, said gas has the potential to produce blue hydrogen, which will be useful in Nigeria's journey towards cleaner energy sources. And our headline inflation rose to 27.33% in the month of October compared to a year ago, largely on the back of the continued depreciation of the Naira and higher food and fuel prices, according to the National Bureau of Statistics. The Consumer Price Index report released by NBS in the week, which measures changes in a multitude of goods and services, showed that inflation rose to a new 18-year high of 27.33% from the previous month. On a month-on-month basis, the inflation rate rose by 1.73%, which was 0.37% lower than the rate recorded in September 2023, which is 2.1%. This means that in October 2023, the rate of increase in the average price level is less than the rate of increase in the average price level in September 2023. Economists had expected that the data will show about 27.8% overall increase in inflation compared to a year ago. And now outside Nigeria, still talking inflation, but this time in UK, where inflation fell sharply in October to its lowest rate in 2 years, largely due to lower energy prices. Inflation, which measures the rate at which consumer prices rise, dropped to 4.6% in October compared to 6.7% in the previous month. Our Chief Economist Office for National Statistics, Mr. Grant Figza, says inflation fell from its peak of 11.1% in October 2022, which is due to a fall in the energy price cap, which limits what suppliers can charge consumers per unit of energy, and Bank of England's decision to raise interest rates in a bid to cool demand in the economy and slow price rises. And in China, President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping have reached agreements on several key areas that include curbing the production of illicit fentanyl and resuming military-to-military communications. The two leaders met on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperative Conference. They also agreed to engage in intergovernmental dialogue on artificial intelligence and our direct flights between the two countries.
I'm pleased to announce that after many years of being on hold, we are restarting cooperation between the United States and PRC on counter-narcotics. In 2019, you may remember, China took action to greatly reduce the amount of fentanyl shipped directly from China to the United States. But in the years since that time, the challenge has evolved from finished fentanyl to fentanyl chemical ingredients and pill presses, which are being shipped without control. And by the way, some of these pills are being inserted in other drugs like cocaine. A lot of people are dying. More people in the United States between the ages of 18 and 49 die from fentanyl than from guns, car accidents, or any other cause, period. So today, with this new understanding, we're taking action to significantly reduce the flow of precursor chemicals and pill presses from China to the Western Hemisphere.
Well, those were some of the biggest stories that made headline in the week. You're still watching Business Week, coming to you from our studios here. And coming up next on the program, Central Bank of Nigeria says old Naira notes remain legal tender indefinitely. That's our talking point after this break. Please stay with us. Well, thank you for joining us. Let's get into our conversation now. The Central Bank of Nigeria has reversed the December deadline for the withdrawal of old Naira notes from circulation, which means that the old designs of 200, 500 and 1,000 Naira note denominations will remain legal tender alongside the new ones until they gradually fade out of circulation. This was revealed in a statement signed by Director of Corporate Communications, Mr. Abdulmomin. The Apex Bank said its latest decision is in line with the international best practices and to forestall a repeat of earlier experiences. CBN added that it is also working with the relevant authorities to set aside the subsisting court ruling that instituted the December deadline. Well, joining me now to talk more on these is a startup manager at Wealth Hackers, Mr. Agbenga Onifade. He joins us now. Thank you for your time, Mr. Onifade, for joining in this conversation. Well, the December deadline for the withdrawal of old Naira notes from circulation ceases to exist, with this directive from the CBN. So what impact would these have on the overall monetary policy and economic stability in Nigeria? Let's start from there.
Sure. So besides the confidence, being a confidence booster, I don't really see much impact because number one, it's still the same currency, correct? So it hasn't actually increased liquidity to the market in any way. I think, however, it's just more or less shows a distrust of the government, number one, and number two, it looks or smacks of a government that does not know what they are doing, even though it's actually a new government entirely. But compared to the old governments, now they've actually removed the deadline and they said the old currency is now back in focus. But so it hasn't actually created extra liquidity, whether you swap it or not. You're not increasing liquidity into the market. So, but rather, I think it's just a little bit of maybe we should say a little bit of a new confidence booster in the markets. Not in the market, with the new CBN government. But when it was released a couple of days ago, most people just thought, the comment that came out was, well, this is total shambles. And to think that many people died in the process of, there was a stampede where people are trying to swap the old notes for the new notes and all that. And there was, of course, should we call it artificial scarcity that was created as a result of this. So it cannot, and now it's actually been repealed, and now people are able to use back, the old notes. So we can have two different notes in circulation while the old ones gradually get phased out. When you take it to the bank, you probably could just get the new notes, and it's a gradual phase out of the old notes. So in a way, it's a confidence booster in the new government or the new CBN, but at the same time, it speaks of a government in shambles, considering, some people lost their livelihoods, and actually lives were taken in the old process as well.
Some have described these move as an act of policy, some as such. So what's your position on this?
With the deadline now taken totally off, I don't think it's actually been made a big deal anymore, since we had the new CBN governor who said, okay, we're going to accept both of them. I think that created the initial calm. And now that he said, there's no more deadline, I think it just creates extra peace of mind. But at the same time, it would not really, it's not going to move the needle in any way at all. And in fact, looking at that at all, looking at what he said, how do we gauge the market? I looked at the local Nigerian stock market. It didn't breathe at all since that. Nothing happened, if at all, since we had a new government who seems to be a little bit more open, even though the people are not particularly friendly, should we say, with the policies at the moment. The markets actually breathed a sigh of relief. It's kind of went all-time high when we had a new government in. But since then, the new policies new policies being addressed hasn't actually moved the needle, hasn't moved the markets in any way. Anyway, initial draft seems like another day at the office, and well, you're probably just going to save me, a few bucks going to the market, or going to the bank, and that's just about it.
Well, according to CBN, the old designs of 200, 500 and 1,000 Naira note will remain a legal tender alongside the new ones until they gradually fade out of circulation. So let me ask you, how do you think the central bank plans to manage any potential challenges with this development?
So how could that be managed? So I think back in a few months ago, there was that bias towards the new notes, and people rather prefer the new notes. And some people even did not realize that the old notes still exist, or so while some people quite new as well not realizing new notes exist. But overall, now that we have both notes being accepted, I think there will be more bias again towards the newer notes. People would say, yeah, for the sake of social gatherings and which is a natural human instinct, I want what's new. Yes, the government say they can accept both, but what you also notice is that with the government saying they can accept both notes, you're not going to find the newer notes in circulation. Well, in terms of the old notes, you're going to find brand new, good-looking notes, if I can say, because generally we're not very good when it comes to keeping this Naira. I mean, we just squash them in the pocket. So I think based on what happened in the past, there's that mistrust of the bank. So you probably still get the average sizable percentage or chunk of the people keeping money under the mattress. Okay, now government said they can accept both. We're going to keep them under the we're going to keep them under the mattress until another regulation comes out and they say, okay, you've got a deadline now. We're not going to accept these notes anymore because we believe now we have enough of the new notes in circulation and would not construe inconvenience to the people. So how would the government phase this out? Thankfully, we print these notes in Nigeria. I think it would have been a wastage because what's the difference between the old and the new notes? I think it's probably just think about color. There's not anything special extra on it that detects forgery or counterfeit. So that's number one. That's something they haven't worked on, and I don't think they want to change again now. That's just going to look again like a government, like I said, who's just absolutely out of sorts. So the government, of course, you get to the bank, they get a certain threshold, they goes to the CBN, they exchange it, the old one gets destroyed while the new ones comes in. So the more people are spending, and in fact, I think based on what the government has always been encouraging, which is encouraging people to to go cashless again. Okay, so the more people go in there, the more newer notes they get. And of course, I think something about education, you got to start preaching to people when people come in exchange. How about this transaction? Can you do it online? That's another way, because I think generally, yes, you're phasing out you're phasing out notes, but at the same time, what should have been encouraged, there should have been a lot more education to the people in the bank. Someone talk about I go to banks here, and a lot of times I want to get on the queue, and they actually talk to me. Oh, how about you use this use this machine? And that's why branches are closing in their droves. So that is something the government should have been preaching out there. Even the banks should own responsibility. So yes, even though we're talking about how do we phase out the old one and get the new ones in? But again, you've got to have that education. The bank should be responsible. The government should be responsible. Listen, radio, jingles, or TV. How about this transaction?
Well, I guess we have to wrap it up with this, Mr. Anifade. So talk to us about how this will impact the overall business activities in the economy. How do you think businesses will react to this development, seeing that there's no more deadline?
Generally, I think business, of course, business would accept anything now. So, as long as it's cash, they would accept it. So again, there's a commitment. Business want to make money. That's why they are there. How would they, they would embrace it, of course. I think they would. You do get some of their customers who are discouraged as a result of not spending. And of course, we do. I think the one thing we need to look at initially was why was this initiated? Why was this? I believe the previous governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, maybe I believe he was doing it acting in good faith, because Nigeria as a country, whenever we have election, we know the political post positions, they do attract, they're quite attractive. Okay, they create a magnet. So of course, people have all this money stashed under the mattress, stashed somewhere in the wardrobes, etc. I've seen situations where people dig boreholes, and it's kind of like look at boreholes with cash being stored in there in reservoirs. Okay, so probably he's thinking, okay, I'm going to change this. We're going to ruin their plan just to prevent people buying this electoral post. So again, how would businesses react? I think a lot of this money now, which has been stashed in there, will probably start coming out. I mean, we saw these things on social media, unverified, of course. Some of this money will start trickling back into the market. But like we said, it's all liquidity anyway, and of course, heightened though. We cannot talk about these things in isolation. Heightened with the overall inflation. So businesses would expect they can sell more. Of course, they're going to have to hold more cash because you're going to get more of this money should flow back into the economy. That's another thing. But what is really driving Nigeria's economy is not really the local market. It's actually more of the foreign market. And the local market, the local currency is actually worth a lot less now. I think about 50% less in the last 6 months or so. So while it's a good confidence booster to the businesses, but at the same time, the fright is still there that the government or that the customers might have this flight from them, which is they're going to have to spend a lot more because things have actually gone up by a lot. We know inflation is about what, 30%, but the real inflation which affects the people is a lot more than 30% because we know things are not going up by just 30%, even though officially inflation is 30%. Exchange rate has gone up by a lot, which is all affects what the prices of things in the market. So what Nigeria actually wants more is forex inflow rather than the local cash inflow into the market. So overall, great confidence booster, but I think they still need to keep champagne on ice. Unfortunately, it's like I said, it's a good confidence booster. Number one, number two, peace of mind. You're gonna have to take that extra walk into the market. Number two, number three is the fact that you have all these unscrupulous, stupid, crazy amounts which has been stashed somewhere. That's again, so I'll call it the underground market. That's a good underground market confidence booster for these guys on the underground. They can bring this money out now that they thought they couldn't spend. They've been, I don't know how they got the money, but it's been stashed somewhere. They can bring it out. But again, it's all going to be what they call the trickle-down economics. It's going to be trickled down into the market. It wouldn't just go straight away. You won't feel the effect until maybe in about 6 months later. Goes into circulation, and then of course the government will start phasing them out. And I think the exchanges that's been made in terms of the swapping that's been made over the past month, it's not going to be as much as what it's going to come out now, because we know definitely, I mean, of course data doesn't support this, we haven't got data with it, but I believe that there's a lot more which has been stashed away than is actually out there. So that's what it will be, and that's what I see.
What do you think the CBN can do to stabilize the Naira?
While there might be a lot more Naira going into the market, but we know a lot more Naira is leaving people's hands because it's costing them a lot more to exchange for these priced dollars or even the priced goods that they want in the market. I think Nigeria heavily depends on diaspora remittance, of course, but again, that's actually coming down. I think, again, because the people who are rather depositing this money into Nigeria, they're actually encouraging their people to leave the country. So there's that brain drain, and with people leaving, they leave with the brain, they leave with the asset, they sell again, and that of course means there's less money or less commitment to the country. Again, we're looking at the crude exports, which is what Nigeria depends on. So yes, we export this crude, but then by the time we buy it back, we're buying back at a more priced rate for Nigeria. This is nothing great at all. Of course, people talking about fixing the refineries. Yes, you can fix the refineries, but I think one thing we need to also always look at is the fact that the world is moving away from oil. Yes, Nigeria depends heavily on oil, but the world is moving away. So I think the government should, this happened to the UK a few years ago when, at some point UK was facing challenges and they were borrowing. And I remember the Prime Minister, David Cameron, said that you cannot borrow your way to wealth. Yes, Nigeria is borrowing and investing in infrastructure, but of course, we cannot keep borrowing our ways to wealth. We need to heavily manage, corruption, which is where the money is going. Because and the fact that we're borrowing to pay debts, that just doesn't make sense. And of course, again, how do you encourage interest in the local market? Because a lot of people buy these foreign reserves. They sell off their Naira to buy a foreign reserve because they have more confidence. They say, don't worry about it. We believe Naira is always going to depreciate while the dollar appreciates. So there's just so much we can do as a country, the government can do, but we've just been doing a lot more talking. I think we need to roll up our sleeves and start looking at these things and start, ticking off what we can achieve in a very short time. And, we need to get started straight away.
Well, I must say thank you so much for your time, Mr. Gbenga Onifade, Startup Manager, The Wealth Hackers. Thank you for your time on Business Week.
Thank you.
And just before we let you go on this week edition of the program, let's tell you that the Vice President, Senator Kashim Shettima, has inaugurated the third cohort of the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council at the Presidential Villa in Abuja. The Vice President urged the council members to be 100% committed to promoting a conducive business environment in the country and implored them to align themselves effortlessly with the 8-point Renew Hope agenda of President Bola Tinubu's administration. This, according to him, will directly reflect the strong political will behind the transformative initiatives of President Tinubu-led government. Earlier, the special advisor to the president on the Council and Investment, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, said the council's mandate is to deliver Nigeria's business environment reform. She said the council's model aligns with global best practices and includes a strong performance tracking elements that ensures MDAs are accountable for reform implementation. Well, and that's our show today. Thank you for watching. We'll be back again next week with another interesting episode of the program. I am Franco Malape. See you then.